be able to catch it and break it up a little bit. But wanted to get into this information. We'll see how long we go. But I put this together over on our Patreon page. Again, you can find this. You get early access to all the stuff that we're going to hit on the show. I just put together the PFF lineups. You guys remember me complaining last year that they didn't have the lineups visible on PFF only during the year when you could show the matchup between this week's opponent? Well, they changed that this year, Tim, and it's awesome. So they already got everything in the system, right? And this might be a little bit hard to see. Maybe I could zoom in. If you guys can't see the numbers, you let me know, and I'll read them off to you. But what I did was just threw these graphics together and also listed the percentage in which – actually, let's just go full screen. We don't have to worry about any copyright here. That might help a little. So in terms of personnel, let's start there, okay? We ran 11 personnel 67.09% of the time. That was 13th most in the NFL. Again, 11 personnel means one running back, one tight end. That's 3 wide receiver sets. And then we were in the nickel 4-2-5, 65.25% of the time. That was 4th most in the league. Now, typically you'll match 11 personnel with nickel. That's why we group those together, right? However, there are some teams like the Philadelphia Eagles, they very, very rarely come out of their nickel defense. So they'll run nickel sometimes when a team's in a 21 or 12 personnel. But I'm wondering if Green Bay might have pressed into that a little bit because in the middle of the season, I'm looking more at like route combinations, passing concepts, zone blocking scheme as opposed to duo and this and that. It's very rare I'll look at it and go, okay, what personnel did we match up with there? But do those numbers catch you guys off guard before we look at the grades here and what our lineups look like? With us running 11 personnel 67% of the time and nickel 4-2-5 65% of the time.
I think the nickel 4-2-5 stands out to me. And I know we'll get down further in the article when we break down, looking at the rest of the defense, versus 12 personnel and then base defense. Hafley's first year as the DC, there was a lot of emphasis on switching to the 4-3. We're going to, be super aggressive up front in the trenches, rushing the passer constantly. And lo and behold, we fall off into nickel 4th most in the league. So I think that one probably stands out the most to me.
Emilio, this is what we talk about all the time. Like when it comes to defense, it's easy to go, we need a third linebacker. We need another linebacker. The reality is the large majority of the time they're on the bench,
I live in nickel. Absolutely. I mean, you want 4 defensive linemen that can actually rush and get home. If you go to, 3 defensive linemen and 6-7 DBs, then you're kind of messing around with it. One thing I did note, Daryl, thank you for pointing that out. We are here. Both of these numbers, Clayton, are above
65%.
65%. That's what
You're an amazing person. You know that, don't you?
That's so true. Mark, what a guy. But yeah, I think that's a great point, Tim. And you really do live in that all the time. The only other things you're going into are, dime, your base 4-3, and then goal line. It's not like you're getting a bunch of crazy looks. Maybe Hafley throws some of those in this year, but it's different than, maybe a new formation on offense if you haven't practiced it and repped it and know the rules and all that stuff. So
right.
Yep.
Jerry in the chat says, are 11 and 12 the only personnel sets run? They are not, Jerry. They are just the ones that we run the most. Like if I go all the way to the bottom, we'll come back up here in a second. If you look here, personnel tendency for offense, the Packers ran 11 personnel 67% of the time. They ran 12 personnel 24% of the time, and they ran 21 personnel 5% of the time. They went uncharted 12, which I'm not sure exactly what that means. That might be like a 12 personnel with an extra offensive lineman.
Right.
There's a 13 personnel where it's 1 running back, 3 tight ends. That's typically like your goal line set. They only ran that less than 0.5%. So they went empty 0-1 there, or I'm sorry, not empty 0-1, but 4 wide receivers, 1 running back. I mean,
no running back, 1 tight end, right?
Sorry. So it is an empty set, like an empty flex trade type look. They ran that 0.29% of the time, I believe it was. And then, of course, you've got an 0-1 there that's got a mark next to it. I'm not sure what that mark means. I didn't grab that off the key of the website. But to answer your question, Jerry, the predominant personnel is 11 personnel at 67%, 12 at 24, and it drops all the way down to 5% with 21. And I don't even know if that 21 was charted with Jaden Reed going into the backfield. Like sometimes some sites will chart that as 21, even though he's technically a receiver, but he's going into the backfield to play running back. That makes sense. So
right. They probably do it by positional alignment, right? That's probably how they're looking at it.
That to me, that would make the most sense, Tim. But you never know, man. Different sites are, they're different.
Because because they could be looking at it like, okay, he's on the roster as a running back. He's just on the field right now. They could look at it like that too. So, but yeah, I mean, 11 and 12 is where we're living. I'd love to see a little bit more 2 running backs. Sprinkle some of that in there. But is that pony package? Are they considering that 11? So that's where we kind of
right. And again, if you think, okay, they did not chart pony package with 11 pony, which is Jaden Reed in the backfield. If they didn't chart that as 21, they are talking about those times that we ran pony package where it was Josh Jacobs and Chris Brooks, right? That's to me, that's a true 21 person.
Yep.
So, all right, back up to the top here. So again, great question though, Jerry. Thank you for asking that. There's your personnel ratings. Now let's look at the player ratings here. Okay, so this is on the bottom, you've got our 11 personnel, and then at the top, you've got our nickel 4-2-5. Now, listen, this doesn't mean this is exactly what the lineup's going to look like. Obviously, they got Jair starting here, and we don't even know if he's going to be on the team. We should find that out next week for mandatory minicamp. I think a decision we'll know by then, I believe, whether they're going to be able to work that deal out or not, I would imagine. But here's how they've got the nickel set up for us, okay? So they've got it listed as outside linebackers at defensive end. Keep in mind that should be defensive ends on the outside now that we're in a 4-3. I don't know who's running PFF, but, boy, they're struggling over there. They're no longer outside linebackers. They're technically defensive ends on our roster, okay? So Rashawn Gary and Enigbare is who they've got as our starting defensive ends, okay? Keep in mind, we all know LVN gets more reps than Enigbare, so take that for what you want there. Kenny Clark and Devontae Wyatt in the middle. And you see Devontae Wyatt, guys, he's trending upward, 66.4. He's right on the border of becoming a a number 1 caliber defensive tackle because, again, as you can see, they're listed as defensive linemen with him being the 37th highest graded out of 118 defensive linemen as opposed to Enigbare and Gary are listed with the edges, okay?
Yep.
So the fact that Wyatt is at 37, guys, that means when you crack into the top 32, that means PFF is grading you out as a number 1 caliber defensive tackle, okay? So he's right on the cusp of breaking into that. This could be the breakout year for Devontae Wyatt, man. That's the big thing that stood out to me on the defensive front. We know Gary's our best pass rusher, hands down. I don't think Enigbare, I think you're going to see him taper off as these younger players get more reps. That's just me personally. I could be wrong there. But the big thing that stood out to me was Wyatt, Tim. I'm excited to see him continue to get better, man. He's trending in the right direction. You know what I mean? Certainly.
Yeah. We talked about that last week a little bit, like when we were talking about the D-line and Coach Covington coming in and, taking a different approach. I mean, Devontae Wyatt is poised for a big year. And if it does happen, if he takes that step, man, this D-line group is going to, as a whole, is going to take a huge step. I mean, if Wyatt makes the jump, I'm looking for big things from this defense going forward for sure.
Yeah. What do you think, Emilio? Defensive line there.
Man, I think they're really gonna step up this year. Looking at that 60 after, kind of hearing what Kenny's gone through, I think that, it's not as terrible as it first looked. I think that, we do have a decent group in there. I'm excited. We got Enigbare in there, but you also got LVN. Who else is going to be on the edge? I almost see all of them breaking 60, hopefully all of them over 65 this year and just kind of turning out. And that'll also lead into that 4-2-5 we were just talking about. Like, if you can get 4 rushing, but we didn't try to do that all last year. It's not like we were asking them to rush 4 every single time. We were simblets and we were bringing scrapes. We were doing twists, dropping guys. So that's something as well that we might need to take into account.
Definitely. And we're going to dive into the linebacker position here next in the nickel 4-2-5. But that's going to do it for hour 1. For those of you listening on the pod, we will see you on the other side for hour 2. We appreciate y'all.
For those of you listening on the pod,
welcome into hour 2. Let's continue with the linebacker position, man. It's hard not to get excited here. You've got our boy, Edgerrin Cooper, 85.7. the 5th highest graded linebacker in the entire NFL last year. Next to him, you got Quay Walker, right? He graded out at a 57.2. He was 63rd last year in the NFL. So what does that mean? He's right inside starting caliber across the league, right? Because, again, there should be 64. There's 32 teams, two inside linebackers, everybody's nickel defense. So he's barely made the cut in terms of, okay, he's a starting caliber linebacker. And this is PFF. It's not everything. It doesn't mean that Quay Walker's a bum. This is just their metric. Just a big contrast there between Edgerrin Cooper and Quay Walker. The thing that I see when I see Quay Walker's grade here, Emilio, is I think, man, if he just takes a step up into the mid-60s, how much better is this defense going to be if Edgerrin Cooper stabilizes? I don't expect Edgerrin Cooper to grade out in around an 85 again. I'm expecting him to drop into the 70s, maybe upper 70s. There's going to be a little bit of that. I think there'll be a little bit of that sophomore, I don't want to say slump, but a little setback. I know this. If he grades out 85 or higher this year, he's on a trajectory to be a Hall of Fame top player. There's no doubt. It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely, Clay. To that point, I was there's been like some videos showing up on my feed of Ray Lewis and Ed Reed, and like Ray Lewis just giving speeches about like motivation and like chasing that dream and greatness, and talking about Kobe and the Mamba mentality, all that stuff. Dude, what if we have something like that with Cooper and McKinney? Yeah, I want Quay to step up, and I want that linebacker duo because that's where we're going to get our speed from the middle. What if Cooper and McKinney are that kind of Ray Lewis, Ed Reed of our Packers, generation now? Like, if we could have both of those guys firing on all cylinders, have one at each level, and then we're working through that D line just humming right along, I think that's a complete possibility. And they are the only ones at that 85 number, or 84, 85 number. I think that's a complete possibility. And just imagining having that kind of tandem back there would be amazing.
Yep.
Tim, what do you think, man?
No, I agree. I think that's a great point, Emilio. I can see that because you're strong on the back, you're strong in the middle, and then we just talked about, Devontae Wyatt, LVN, these guys taking a step in the trenches. Now you got yourself one of those complete defenses, right? And that's what you're talking about when you talk about those old, mid 2000s Ravens defenses, right? I mean, just solid front, middle, and back end. Really hard to score points on teams like that. And when you've got those, two kind of key guys, you just put the pieces in around them and build up your squad and go. And I think that's a great comp, man. I could totally see that, and I'm a big Quay Walker fan too. I wanted him to pop more than probably anybody else. But if Quay's kind of where he's at, I'm sure there's still a role on this team. But maybe he's not that, featured guy in your linebacker room. Maybe it is a guy like Edge Coop. Who knows? This year we're going to find out, though. I'll tell you that. Because like Clayton said, we might see a little regression, but I don't think it'll be much, if any. And hopefully it's a pleasant surprise that he grades out even higher than he did last year. And it's another step. So, sky's the limit for this defense. But, when you got pieces like that in place, you've got a chance at winning it all for sure.
Yeah. Everybody in the chat, too, along with Ron Sample, seemed to feel really, really confident that Cooper's just going to stabilize, man. I hope you guys are right. That'd be absolutely awesome. He says Cooper very well could grade in the low 80s. Again, his understanding of the defensive confidence would be greatly improved. Also, Ron, putting on that extra weight, too, maybe feeling a little more confident at the point of attack, that type of thing. And not that he didn't look confident last year. I mean, that dude would attack the line of scrimmage like it was almost to the point where you could tell the coach was like, hey, Cowboys, slow down a little bit, okay? Let's play within the scheme here. I know. Guy around.
Right, and remember, they only had one game where they were both starting last year together. That was the last game of the season, the playoff game against Philly. One game where they both were on the starting lineup. So that's again something that we were chasing all year to see what it could be. You got one look at it, and not even a full complete look, right? So I really am excited for that.
Yeah. Holmes says, I think Quay is going to have a good season. Again, it's like there's nowhere to go but up, right? Like, I mean, I could see it being something that he takes a step into the 60s. And Will it be enough to warrant giving him a contract extension without letting him test the market? I don't know. I think if Quay hit the market, he would get a lot more, kind of like I don't know. I just think he would get a lot more than what we would probably be willing to give him at this point. However, they have expressed that they're interested in re-signing him. So
I agree with Holmes, man. Like, can you imagine if Quay does have a great season?
Oh, the sky's the limit, dude.
And then Cooper takes that step. Devontae Wyatt takes the step.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness!
And what if they get him? What if they get him locked up before then, too, Tim? Maybe they're working at it. On the way as we're kind of coming into the season or something. They get him locked up, and he does have a good season. Then you're like, okay, I got a screaming deal on that one.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, let's move back to the safety position. Then we'll come back to corner. Man, another strength in this defense, and you're noticing something here too. Like I want you guys to key in. If you can see my cursor here. When I talk about where I've got positions on tier of importance, I say edge defender, right? Gary is grading out at 73 last year. He led the team in sacks. He led the team in pressures. He led the defensive line in run stops. He graded out, the 28th highest edge defender, although I would disagree with that grade. I think it should have been higher. So there's a tier 1 position. And then defensive tackle as well, right? 3-tech. Look at Devontae Wyatt. He's trending in the right direction, a 66.4. But that's why I was saying go get a 3-tech in the draft if the right one falls to you. Like, try to get it in free agency, whatever you can do. Imagine if you had Devontae Wyatt next to a 75-plus player. Now you're like, okay, defensive tackle is locked down. But again, tier 1, and then tier 2, middle linebacker, right? Look at Cooper. Tier 3, safety. You see what I'm saying? The center of that defense, guys, is looking stout.
Mm-hmm.
If Devontae Wyatt takes a step back this year and we go, okay, we know 100% now he's not the defensive tackle of the future. He's not the 3-tech of the future. Go get that guy. And you're the backbone of this defense is built. I just want to point that out. That's the visualization I'm talking about in the most important positions. And again, Gary on one side, rushing the quarterback, drawing double teams with the 3-tech on the opposite side. They can't double team both of those guys. If they do, there's going to be 3 people in the route. That's all there's going to be. So it's all a hat count game. Does that make sense? Like I know we've come a long way with the show and everything, but you guys remember when I first started doing the pod, I'm saying tier 1 and tier 2. That's what I'm talking about, is building the center of that defense just rock solid. Because again, build it strong in the middle because you've got extra defenders that are called the out of bounds lines. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Absolutely. And you were saying that McKinney is tier 3 or level 3, but he's tier 2, right? You were saying? Yeah.
No, it's a tier 2 position. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So basically, post safety. Now listen, in the NFL today, they're interchangeable. We've talked about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, at any point that you felt like you needed to cover deep center and the middle of the field underneath, you've got Edgerrin Cooper patrolling underneath in the middle, and you got Xavier McKinney you can put over the top down the seam. Now, you may go into a game, Emilio, and you don't want to put him there, right? Mm-hmm. You may say, hey, look, this is one of those games we need his presence underneath. They like to hit a lot of spot plays and spacing and things underneath. Let's get McKinney rotating into the box type thing. But the point is to have that guy that can cover deep. And, oh, by the way, Tim, Evan Williams, 72.3 is a rookie, 24th highest graded safety. I mean, we got 2 guys that are hands down grading out like number 1 safeties on any team in the league.
Hey, we talk about linebacker being interchangeable, right?
Yep.
Sam and Will, even the Mike, just moving guys around. It's the same thing on the back end now, right? And we're loaded in that safety room. I feel really good about the secondary. So I think you're right. When you talk about Xavier McKinney, he's obviously not a tier 2 guy. He's just playing in a tier 2 position of importance group. Certainly arguably the best at what he does. And when you have guys like that in your room, you're that much better. So I agree, man. I feel great. We haven't really scratched the surface on our boy KT Oladapo either. I mean, there's depth. I mean, we saw a little bit of Zane Anderson last year, and we all got a pretty happy awakening when we realized that dude is more than a special teamer, and he can actually go out there and play the safety position effectively. So there's a lot to be excited about back there.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. I think that's a great point. The fact that he's at the tier 2 position, but McKinney legit is a tier 1 player because Wes and
Oh, no doubt.
Wes and Mike were talking about how McKinney wants to wear that gold jacket at the end of his career. He's playing for, obviously he's playing for the Packers, he's playing for a Super Bowl, but he's playing to better himself each year, to better his teammates. He wants that gold. He wants to be just ingrained in the NFL, and I love that's his drive. That's his goal. You got to chase something. It doesn't always have to be Lombardi if you want to set a personal goal. Perfect, because as you're chasing that, you're going to bring the team with you. So the fact that you got a guy like that, and now he knows that he's the mentor in the secondary room. He's teaching all the young guys, like bringing in, like you said, Oladapo, get Bullard going, Evan Williams, keep him going, all that stuff, coming from just a genuine guy.
Yeah. And moving on to the cornerback room, again, this is how they've got it laid out, although I think based off of OTAs, and granted, it's just OTAs, and Matt LaFleur did say in the presser the other day the same thing that we've been saying on the show, that, hey, look, don't pay any attention to who's getting reps with the ones and the twos. That stuff does not matter right now. It doesn't. They're trying out different – there's different workload assignments. Some guys are maybe a little bit banged up than others. Others might be a little behind the 8 ball in terms of learning the scheme. Hey, let's get them out with the ones today, get them some extra reps so they can get the scheme out. There's a lot of things that come into play there. But nonetheless, what PFF has got listed, Jair Alexander and Nate Hobbs on the outside. So it'll be a 75.2 for Jair. He was the 19th highest graded corner in the league. Nate Hobbs at a 61.4. He was the 72nd highest graded corner in the league. And then, of course, in the slot, they've got Javon Bullard. Now, at OTAs, they had Nate Hobbs playing in the slot, and they had Carrington Valentine and Keyshawn Nixon on the outside because Jair isn't there, right? And then, of course, whenever Nate Hobbs would come off the field, because I think it was he missed for a personal matter yesterday, they brung Javon Bullard back into the slot. So it does feel like Nate Hobbs, as it sits right now, will probably be the slot corner in our nickel defense, and Javon Bullard will be the backup slot. I like the fact that you got a guy that was your starter last year has now been pushed back as a backup. It just shows you how much more faith they've got in Nate Hobbs if that does hold true when they get to training camp. And again, why is this important? Because once again, we play nickel 65% of the time last year. So this is the defense we're going to be in. And you could tell that they went into free agency, Emilio, looking to build this roster out to, all right, let's build around nickel and let's build around 11,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that kind of just comes back to that point of like you need to plan for anything moving forward. So you don't want to have just one, and you don't want to be a one and done. You don't want to have just one option to go to. You need to have a little bit of backup. That's why we beefed up the O-line. That's why you go out and get Hobbs to set the floor. Okay, you find one corner at the end, right? We're not even talking about any of the ones we brought in. You still got safeties on there, but you still need depth because guys get injured, guys get hurt. You got to rotate. You could have Bullard could be your big nickel, Hobbs could be the the little nickel. All that stuff that could come into we're talking about nickel 4-2-5, but there could be 5 different groups of guys going in on that 4-2-5. You could have your big, you could have your small, you could have your speed, you could have pass rush only, extra coverage, take out a linebacker. You could do 4-2-5 and take out a linebacker. You're basically in dime, but if someone wants to play, someone wants to step up and fill, you can do that. So I think that there is going to be a lot of options for half, and I think that we are going to need this, the depth. Absolutely, I'm happy that Goody and the team chase that.
Yeah, and Tim, looking at the depth chart here from our lads, and again, this is an old one. We need to get it updated just in case things have changed. But I will say this kind of held true in terms of the OTAs and who was out there with the ones. They've got Jair Alexander and Keyshawn Nixon as the outside backers there, right? They've got Nate Hobbs in the nickel. So they seem to kind of predict that's what was going to happen in OTAs, right? Now, Jair's not there, so we've seen Carrington Valentine come on the field with Keyshawn Nixon and Nate Hobbs in the slot. So Carrington Valentine would be next up. And then they've got Micah Robinson listed with Kalen King being the next nickel. Now, obviously, that's Javon Bullard there. So I don't think they truly see Kalen King as the number 2 nickel. I mean, who knows on down the line. But in terms of the cornerback room, at left corner, they've got Jair Alexander, Carrington Valentine, Isaiah Dunn, and then Kazir Brown. On the right side, they've got Keyshawn Nixon, Micah Robinson, Caleb Hayes, Tyron Herring, And then at the nickel spot, they had Nate Hobbs, Kalen King, Kamal Haddon, and Jonathan Baldwin. Although I think we would all agree Javon Bullard would be leapfrogging Kalen King there in that backup nickel spot. What do you think, Tim? And I can just tell me if you need me to drop the step chart down. I thought it'd be important to kind of look at this so we can see it as a whole over the top of the PFF.
Yeah, no, keep it up, please. It's great reference. And shout out to our lads, like, unofficial, way too early kind of depth chart here, but at least it's kind of something to work with. I was kind of in the camp of, for a while they're really thinking that there's an emphasis by the Packers staff to, make Javon Bullard a safety. Like, they drafted him to be a safety.
Mm-hmm.
He's in a crowded safety room. I don't think Javon Bullard saw Evan Williams coming for that job. And Evan Williams just broke out as a rookie, had a great year. So,
I don't think Evan Williams seen it either.
Yeah, exactly. So
like, man, this ain't really hard.
Yeah. So, like, that being said, I think that maybe I don't think they are trying to force him into that room. I think they're going to ask him to be a safety and to be a slot corner when called upon. And, we talked about the struggles he had in coverage on the back end after playing so much slot and then being moved back to the safety position when Williams got hurt. I think that's going to be the norm for him, perhaps going forward. Is you have to be versatile to find a role on this team. And hey, like I said, cut down day, that's going to be really interesting when we get down to that final 53 this year, because there's going to be some heads that are going to roll. They're going to have to, and there's just not enough room for all the talent that we have. So when you look at that secondary, I like Bullard as the backup slot. I really do.
Me too.
Kalen King, I think, can play there too, but that's just like me wanting to believe that. I don't think we've seen anything at the NFL level to think that like he's a reliable number 2 slot corner. So having Nate Hobbs makes things that much better for us. Another killer move by Goody in free agency to secure a guy like that, because if in fact we don't have Jair Alexander, I don't think that, all hell's going to break loose in that cornerback room, because of the stability that, Nate Hobbs brings to the table, and then allowing these rookies to continue to develop, rookies and second year guys, So I think it's a good thing that we have going.
Definitely. Absolutely. All right. Let's move over to the offensive side of the ball. And Amelia, you just dip when you need to. If you're in here, I'll ask for your input. If you're not in here, it's totally cool, man.